Hello everyone and welcome to the Telespazio Xpress Talks, a 15 to 20 minute talk with leading figures from the new space sector, where we will talk about technology and sustainability. Welcome and enjoy the Telespazio Xpress Talks.
Welcome to the Telespazio Xpress Talks, our limited series on new space and sustainability. Today, we have the pleasure to have Marta Massimiani from Satlantis. Welcome, Marta.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Andres.
It's a pleasure to have you. Marta and I both speak Spanish, and we're carrying out this interview today in English for an international audience. But it's really great to see how you, Marta, have mastered Spanish in such a short period of time, living in Spain with Satlantis. So I'm completely impressed about your skills.
Thank you very much. You're too kind.
So, Marta, since you're here with us today, I would really like to know a bit more about you. So, who is Marta, and where do you come from, and where does your interest in space come from? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm Italian, although I'm working for a Spanish company and I live in Spain now. I have to make a little bit of a disclaimer here because I don't have a technical background. So even though I work in the space sector, I'm not an engineer. I actually studied political science and international relations. So I come from a completely different sector. And what happened was that after graduating, I wasn't sure what to do next. And it was a coincidence because my sister, who is actually an aerospace engineer, had started working for a small startup working in the space sector, and they were looking for someone for administration mainly. So I thought, okay, I will make photocopies for a couple of months while I figure out what I want to do with my life, basically. And then 9 years after that, I'm still working in the space sector, although I don't do any more photocopies. But I think it was by chance, basically. And I must say that I was really, really lucky because I found myself to be at the right place in the right moment, in the sense that for a very small company like that one, everybody had to do something. So a little bit of everything. And so I was able to see, first of all, a lot of processes firsthand. So the hardware and the laboratories were there, but also I was really lucky because I encountered some colleagues and my boss that were really keen and available in explaining me things. So I asked a lot of questions and they told me basically everything I know about this sector. I'm really grateful for that.
Fantastic. I mean, this diversity of different things you're able to see in a small company is partly as well one of the drivers of why I joined Telespazio a few years ago now. In Telespazio, we get to see so many different projects and so many different activities that, don't have anything to do with each other necessarily. And this depth and breadth of activities actually makes it very, very interesting. And I suppose for you, it's the same. And you landed then in Satlantis. So why Satlantis? Why did you decide to go to northern Spain and join this fantastic startup?
So what happened was that after approximately 5 years working in that reality, I was willing to challenge a little bit myself. And I already met some people from Satlantis. I was really impressed with the roadmap of the company. I think that especially for some of the founders, they have this sort of a thrill that is mostly inspirational. And I think it's also contagious in the sense that you feel excited as they are about the project. And also already knowing people there, I knew it was going to be a so-called soft landing, we could say. So I decided to apply for a position there, and I was really lucky even here because of the team that I encountered. I was really lucky, and also I wanted to, let's say, work a little bit more with applications. So of course, Satlantis is a provider of Earth observation solutions. So of course, you can understand that each use case is a bit different. So I think it's very versatile, and also it can be really, let's say, interesting to work with. Again, as you mentioned, something different every day. It's never quite, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, great. Actually, I regularly see Satlantis in the news, whether you guys have signed a new contract, a new agreement, you're expanding internationally. I mean, you guys have been really, really active lately. So what's the secret behind, this success you are having at the moment?
I think it's a combination of many factors. I think on one hand, I have to recognize the foundation of the company, the fact that of course, the core of the company is the scientific root that comes from astrophysics, but also beside that, you have this strong business and administration and finance and engineering. So it's really a solid foundation. And on top of that, we have these multidisciplinary teams. It's really important for us to have different backgrounds because we think that is enriching the company actually. And then apart from that, I must say that we have quite an ambitious agenda as a company. I think we're really active in the sense that we like to be as dynamic as possible. And also I think we like to work in a path that is not necessarily what a company like ours should have in theory, in the sense that it's not like every optical payload provider is going to deep as we have done in applications or in solution informations. So I think that is also driving us really into what is today the company. I joined the company 4 years ago and we were about 30 people. We are now 80 people. So I think we are really growing fast, despite the pandemics, despite everything. I think we are really going fast. So.
And are you able, now you say you're 80 people, but are you able still with 80 people to keep the team spirit that you had at the beginning when the team was a lot smaller?
I think that it sounds incredible, but I think so. And the fact is that I think that fundamentally, we all share the same vision with respect to what is the working environment. So it's not like we almost never have tension. And, in a company growing as fast as we are, pressure is inevitable. And we are working with very tight deadlines and stuff like that. So it's easy sometimes to find working environments that are not are not as easy as they should be, but here really everybody, I don't know, we're really collaborating with each other. So I think we are still keeping that team spirit within.
Great. One thing that we really care about in Telespazio is sustainability. We support a number of different projects in this domain, and Satlantis, of course, is another company very, very active in supporting sustainability and all this environmental impact topics these days. Can you explain a little bit what Satlantis is doing along these lines, and what are your goals and objectives on sustainability?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have started some years ago a project for methane emission and quantification. And that is definitely something where we are tackling environment. And this is a project really big for us for many reasons. One reason is that two of the main TSOs, both in Spain and Agas and in the US, Williams, became investors of Satlantis because of this project. So, I mean, it's kind of a big project because of the presence of these shareholders, but it's also a big project because we really decided to dedicate a full working group to this effort internally. We have a dedicated group that is composed of specialists for payload and platform and science, because we think that we really can bring added value to this application. And so it is really something big for us also because of the impact in terms of what is today the international effort fighting climate change and global warming. And methane is, in fact, the second most abundant greenhouse gases after CO2. So I mean, it's becoming really a top priority in the agenda of governments and international organizations. So we really see how this project can benefit, okay, and at least bring some positive value to that fight.
Right. So your customers then, you're talking about some oil and gas companies and some organizations that in nature they are somehow pollutants. But how are you planning to work? Are you only planning to work with these pollutant companies or also with governments and the regulation side of things? How does that work? Can you actually work with both of them at the same time?
So as a matter of fact, we can, because what happens is that the regulation, especially at European level, are becoming stricter. So it is interest for the oil and gas companies to understand what is that they are emitting and how to countermeasure that. Because ultimately, the goal for everybody is to reduce emissions. Maybe for different reasons, but that is the goal for everybody. So I think that, for instance, Enagás, they have committed to become a carbon neutral company by 2040. So for them, it's really crucial that we help them. And in fact, Enagás has been really a precious partner for us in terms of all the validation of the technology that we have developed for this scope because of their involvement with this code. So I think that is possible because we are doing it so to work with both, let's say, sides.
Great. You're talking about methane, and although you briefly touched on this point, why methane, and what is the technology that you guys are developing in order to detect methane and deliver this information to your customers?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, methane is one of the worst, let's say, greenhouse gases that we are dealing with. And the fact is also that almost a third of today's global warming is estimated to be caused by human activities causing methane emissions. So, I mean, it's really something important to tackle. And the technology basically that we have developing is based on our core technology that is called ICIM, that is the same payload that we use for other applications, but is simply adapted to this vertical. Because of the, let's say, of the bands that we use on the optical payload, the camera is equipped with a special sensor that we have developed, and that is actually able to provide, on one hand, a high spatial resolution that is going to be really important in terms of detecting and identifying point sources emissions, which are actually considered one of the worst case because of the difficulty that let's say, the difficulty in detecting them. Mm-hmm. And also, on the other hand, we are also providing with the same instrument both visible and infrared capacity. And that means that on one hand, you are detecting and you are seeing methane emissions, but on the other hand, you are also getting visually information on the context of the emission. So that is also critical to get insights on what is causing the emission, what is happening in the surrounding areas, and so on. So I think this is basically the technology that we are in.
Oh, very nice. Can you tell us a bit more about what's coming next for Satlantis? What are your plans? Are you expanding a lot the services of methane monitoring and launching a lot more satellites, or how do you see the future, and what are your plans in these regards?
So I must say that we have plans for many applications, but specifically for methane, basically we have recently launched the precursor that is called JSAT precursor. JSAT is going to be a small constellation dedicated to methane emission detection, and the JSAT precursor is going to offer certain performances, as I mentioned, in visible and infrared spectra, but then we are going to launch also in the following years a couple of microsatellites that are going to provide even higher performances and are going to also increase the revisit over certain areas of interest. So I think we're going to, let's say, expand a little bit the capacity for methane emission and quantification. Although we are not targeting a huge constellation for the moment, at least.
At least for the moment, but who knows what will happen in the future.
Indeed.
You know, one thing that we find in Telespazio when we approach certain customers, particularly in this domain on sustainability but also on more specific applications like farming or water management and so on, is that our customers initially don't know much about the benefits of using space technology in their own applications. They don't see how a satellite or how this data can help them on a day-to-day basis. And I think probably Satlantis is playing a very key role in educating customers as well, and make them understand what is the impact on the actions they have. And I don't know, maybe you're even discovering things or some actions that they're taking where they do not realize that they're actually polluting a lot, or that they have losses or something like that. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
you're
No,
very
please.
active on that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, basically, yeah, first of all, talking with users that are not aware of what satellite can bring to them is the story of our life, basically. So I perfectly understand what you mean. And yes, but actually in this specific domain, we have been lucky because for instance, Senegal, they knew already what satellite monitoring could bring to these methane emissions, let's say, applications. So in that case, it was a bit easier because also, again, for methane emissions specifically, the also international organizations are already recognizing the role of satellites into this monitoring of methane emissions. So I think that in this specific case, we were again lucky, but I perfectly understand, because in other applications, in other domains, that is really about educating the customer, understanding their problems, and try to formulate a solution that is maybe they didn't think about.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Yeah, for all of us. So we are arriving to the end of our time talking together today. So I would like to finish our conversation with maybe some more information about, I don't know, do you have any anecdote in Satlantis or any tradition, superstition that you guys in the company follow religiously that you can share with us? Of course.
So if you talk about tradition, I think about what we call the convention. That is basically an assembly that we celebrate once a year with all the team and the founders. And we gather in some place, and basically it's a mean of knowing each other a little bit better, like team building activity. But it's also to recap a little bit on what have been the activities of the previous year and what is expected for the next year. And the fun part is that the team is usually divided into groups, smaller groups, multidisciplinary, so everybody's from different departments. And in each group is assigned a series of presentations. So, for instance, each one of us will present their activities. And at the end of it, basically, first of all, throughout this presentation, you become aware of the fact that we are not speaking the same language. So even within the same company, sometimes different departments can have a different language that they are speaking. So it's really an exercise of understanding each other. And also at the end of the session, one secretary for each group has to report to the assembly what has been the content of the presentation. And this is really the fun part, because you will have maybe a person from finance reporting on, I don't know, the image processing technique, and a person from mechanics reporting on the European funding scheme. So that is, of course, really an exercise, but it's also really fun. And ultimately, I think that this event, what I like about it is that, first of all, you get really a vision of, or at least a picture of what it is, the status of the company and the mission of the company. But it's also, on the other hand, I like that you have the chance of putting yourself in your colleagues' shoes, in the sense that you really try to understand what is the day-to-day work like. And finally, I think that is also what I like about it, is that you realize that even though each one of us has its own workload and its own task, in the end, everybody's working for the same purpose, for the same scope, that is the company itself. So I think that it is, at least for me, maybe someone would say this is cheesy, but I think that sometimes it's easier to stay committed to the team rather than to a vision that maybe resonates with you, but maybe something abstract. While stay committed to people and colleagues that you grow with professionally every day, that, as I mentioned before, they constantly show up for each other. So I think that it's easy to stay committed to that team.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. It has to be so much fun that day, and I'm sure it's a challenge for some of your colleagues to present on topics where they don't feel very comfortable with or don't know anything about. But I think that builds up the team spirit and the whole company spirit as well. I find it brilliant. Thank you very much, Marta. We have arrived at the end of our conversation. Thank you, and all the best for the upcoming ventures of Satlantis, and looking forward to catching up with you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andres. Thanks again for having me, and thanks to Telespazio for this initiative. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.